Greetings. Introducing Voices of Festival, brand new podcast series from the International African Arts Festival, created to keep you connected as we count down to our 55th year of culture, creativity, and community. Each week, hear directly from the artists, dancers, musicians, vendors, and community members who make this festival an unforgettable experience. Tune in every Thursday at 8 p.m. on YouTube for Voices of Festival. Celebrate the culture, feel the rhythm, be part of the journey. Hey, everybody Ghani, Alafia, Shalom, Hotep, Salamu Alaikum. Welcome to Voices of Festival. I'm Adeyemi Bandele, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Yes, Sakina and Nzinga-Knard. I am here.
And we welcome you. We welcome you. This is the weekly podcast of the International African Arts Festival. We are joined, but before we get started, because I have to remember, and the bishop will probably help me here and say, you have not because you ask not. And so, Sakina, would you please tell our folks how they can support us?
Yes. You can like, you can comment, you can subscribe, you can share, you can reach out and let us know what you think. And you can follow us at IAA Festival on Facebook and Instagram.
All right. Let me do this announcement because we're going to be rolling. And at the end, I don't want to forget. But on February 22nd at Restoration Plaza, Professor Roger Green and attorney Esmeralda Simmons will be talking about Black New York and its relationship with Mayor Mamdani. 3 p.m., that's right, 3 to 5, Restoration Plaza. So please get out there. Mamdani will not be there, but we're going to talk about it. So that's the event. So please get on out there. Let me welcome our two guests, both of whom, thank God, I have known for years. And my first guest, I told her I felt like I had gone fishing and caught a 12-pound croaker. But she is just an incredible person. Bishop Leah Daughtry is the national presiding prelate of the House of the Lord Churches, the fourth in succession. She was installed in October 2019. The Bishop Daughtry is a nationally recognized organizer, activist, political strategist, author, and a bunch of other things. In 2018, she launched Power Rising, a convening of, by, and for Black women, designed to support Black women in leveraging their political, economic, and social power to ensure equity. The highly successful gathering created an agenda that is turning power into action and using our influence for the betterment of ourselves, our communities, and our country. Bishop Daughtry previously served as Chief of Staff of the Democratic Party, as well as Chief Executive Officer of the 2008 and 2016 Democratic National Convention, making her the first person in Democratic Party history to hold the position twice. I guess you did it once. The next time they messed up, so they had to bring you back. Would you all please welcome Bishop Leah Daughtry. And joined by my brother and friend. Last time he was here, I didn't give him the proper welcome, because when you know people, you get familiar with them. But I have to give the professor his props here. Roger Green, American legislator who served in the New York State Assembly for 26 years. I'm not sure how many of those years I worked with you as Chief of Staff, but it was an absolute pleasure. Representing the 57th Assembly District, comprised primarily of Fort Greene, Clinton Hills, Prospect Heights, etc. Assemblyman Green's resume not only impacts local stuff, but also international, being a part of the organizing effort that brought Nelson Mandela to the United States. And by the way, Roger and I always talk about the fact that people don't realize that the first place that Nelson Mandela visited when he came to the United States was Brooklyn, Boys and Girls High School field. Incredible, incredible, incredible experience. Leah, were you there?
I was.
Hello. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
there.
Well, listen, both of you, welcome, welcome. We are here tonight to get from both of you reflections on the passing of Jesse Jackson. And because I know both of you had an opportunity to work with him, and we wanted to get from people who knew him, you know, and not just people who talked about him. But I also, for both of you, Roger, you may not know, but Leah, we're also paying tribute today because we lost Reverend Graylin Hagler, as you know, passed on February. Did you know him, Roger?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah. So that one hit me. I said, we turn around and boom, boom. So we want to remember him also. But let's get started with both of you. When did each of you first meet Reverend Jackson? Bishop, you want to go first?
Sure. Well, first of all, welcome. Hi, family. It's so good to be with you this evening. It feels like old home week.
Thank you.
My first recollection of Reverend Jackson was when I was a very little girl. I think I was about 6 years old. And I was on the boycott line with my dad, Reverend Herbert Daughtry.
Which one?
We were boycotting A&P.
Okay.
Because at that time he was co-chair of Operation Breadbasket in Brooklyn, and we were boycotting and I was like, Daddy, he would come and get me from school every day, and we go to the boycott line. It's like, why are we boycotting A&P? He said, because they won't hire Black people. And so we would, I'd go after school to the boycott line. And then one day Reverend Jackson came. And all I could remember, I didn't know who he was, but I knew that he was probably the tallest man with the biggest afro I had ever seen. I said, Daddy, who's that? He said, that's Reverend Jesse Jackson. And Reverend, he's how he is. He just scooped me up, and we walked the boycott line. And so he was been part of our family and certainly part of our church family ever since. I posted a picture yesterday of him at the church with the family. And I think that was like 1983, 40 some years ago. And then more recent picture when I was with him a little while ago. So he's been part of my life for as long as I can remember.
Wow. Listen, as I segue to Roger, it's interesting you say that because Roger, we were at Long Island University, Jesse running, right?
Yes.
And so, like your dad, I take my crew. So I got Kudja and Gamba and him, and I'm looking around and saying, where the hell is he? Next thing I know, Gamba is in Jesse's hands, and Jesse's holding him up in front of the auditorium. I said, look at this. But I got to do this part, Roger. And I sent you a little text about this, Leah, but you didn't hit me back, but that's all right. Monique Presley, in a discussion with somebody, used the term Leah Daughtry's of the world.
Oh, boy.
Hello. Leah Daughtry's of the world. I said, well, look at this. Hey, but it's so true. Roger, your first interaction with Jesse Jackson.
Wow. My first interaction with him was when I was in college. I was head of the Black Student Union at Wilberforce University. And we invited him to come in and, this was shortly, quite honestly, after Dr. King had been assassinated. And so he came in and one of our convocations that we had almost on a weekly basis, gave one of his exceptional speeches. And I think that's the thing that I've always was impressed with Jesse. A lot of folks just saw him, in the context of his folksy, sometimes urban and country witticism. But beneath that, there was a serious public intellectual.
Mm.
If you sat down, and Leah knows this, if you sat down with Jesse on a one-on-one basis, he had a mastery of theology, of philosophy, U.S. and global history. His core proficiencies and understanding of how all of that was interconnected with the struggle for justice was just unbelievable. He was, in fact, a real public intellectual, but one that had an activist motive to it. And, you know, I just recall that. In fact, Leah, I was thinking about him today. You know, so Al Van was the state coordinator for both of his campaigns for president. Percy Sutton was his national campaign coordinator. And I remember I was traveling with, because I was coordinating Jesse's campaign for the Borough of Brooklyn, political coordinator, and I was traveling with Reverend Daughtry, Leah's father, one evening as we were traveling with Jesse, as we were going church to church for his campaign. And Reverend Daughtry was saying, well, how are we going to motivate these people? Some of them are so beat down and alienated to come out and vote. You know, just, you know, conversation we would have. We walked into the church. Jesse must have internalized that because he got up and he starts a riff. He started talking about Sigmund Freud's theory of the id and the ego.
Mm.
Now you can imagine all these people sitting in this church. None of them are going to no graduate studies or postgraduate studies around psychology. But Jesse gets into it. He starts talking about the id and the ego, and then how that's related to I am somebody. And
Mm.
so the church starts going, mm-hmm, uh-huh. And then he starts breaking it down and he starts saying, well, there's the ego, but now I want to talk about the we go. And he starts talking, and he starts talking
Well,
about the importance
the we go.
of unifying the Black community, you know, to achieve the justice that we need. And by the time them folks started stomping their feet, run, Jesse, run, Jesse, run. And so that was his unique ability, you know, his just unbelievable ability to, you know, just, you know, his depth of knowledge, you know, his intellect, and being able to break it down so the common person could understand what it is that we needed to do. And I just remembered that this morning when I was thinking about it, because that, you know, I was traveling with Reverend Daughtry, and we were going to these churches, and here's Jesse just going to break down almost like a, you know, a class, popular education about, you know, the relationship between id, ego, and we go. And I'll never forget that.
Sakina, no, you wanted to raise something.
No, I'm just, I'm listening to your stories. And, it's one thing to know of him, of his greatness, and then to hear personal accounts of interactions with him. And you all were right by his side, in the midst of activism, in the midst of campaigning. And I think that's great, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I
I'm
do
sorry.
have,
Go ahead,
I do
Sakina.
have a question later, but I want to hear more. I want to
Okay.
hear more.
So,
You're
let,
talking about the campaigning.
yeah. And what's interesting, though, I wanted to find out, though, um, what was Reverend Jackson's impact on each of you? I know
Mm-hmm.
you talked about how you met him, but now, did he have an impact, a lasting impact on you? Was there something that he shared with you that stays with you to this day? It impacts the work that you do. Roger, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think, and I use that that last discussion I had as an example. You know, first, one of the things was Jesse's loyalty. You know, a lot of folks don't understand just how loyal he was to so many people around the country. When I was, running for re-election, I had some heavy campaigns against me. Jesse came in and supported me on, without a, he just would come in, So that's one thing. He taught me about the importance of loyalty, to your allies. That's one. The other is, quite honestly, I've been around a lot of different folks, but you can tell when somebody has undying love for their people, and that's one of the characteristics that I found with Jesse. His ability to have a sense of humor for those of us who made mistakes, but also a capacity to support folks who needed the help. That's one thing. The other thing was Jesse had a unique ability to, he was the elected official from my perspective that was able to transition a a traditional civil rights movement to a human rights movement, and to connect it to folks who were more like cultural nationalists, if I will. Jesse had that capacity. He was of that generation that was able to reach over, understood those of us who were more inclined to be involved in a Black Power movement, community empowerment movement, and to build that type of coalition. And I learned from him why that was important, how to, incorporate that into how I was engaged in the political process. Yeah. And so those are the things that I remember about him so well. Yeah.
Yes.
Leah?
Can you speak
Wait, I'm
to
sorry.
establishment of the Rainbow Coalition?
Wait, Sakina, I'm sorry. Let me just get Leah's part first, and then we'll go ahead on. Leah?
Okay.
Sure. I went to work for Reverend Jackson in a sense when I was in college. Went to school in New Hampshire, and that was the year that he was running his first campaign, in the '84 campaign, and I was a junior on campus at Dartmouth, and much to the chagrin of Baba Joe, who fussed at me about Dartmouth for years and years and years, until Zola, his daughter, went to Dartmouth, and then he laid off me. So I was a junior at Dartmouth when his campaign was coming, and the debates were going to be at Dartmouth, and he was coming to speak. And so he called me several months earlier and said, "You in New Hampshire, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, Reverend." He said, "I need you to organize my campaign there." And you didn't tell Reverend that. So I said, "Okay." I didn't know a bit more about a presidential campaign than fly. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know any of that. What I knew about organizing, I had learned from Baba G2 and Baba Al and my dad and Sam Penn. And so how to organize people, I understood. But you're talking about presidential campaigns, I didn't know what any of that meant. So I grabbed my sister, Sharon. She was at Dartmouth also. And we said, okay, we just got to start talking to people. So we did. And that's how I got into the campaign rhythm. And we learned so much. And what I learned during that campaign is that none of us knew anything about presidential campaigns. But we were willing, we believed in the candidate. And so we were willing to apply whatever skills we brought to the table to further his campaign. And it was great. He did really well. We learned about conventions, and we learned about party rules, and we learned about raising money and all of that, people's signatures. We had to learn, and we were learning while we were flying the plane.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was an amazing opportunity for us. And there are probably three things I remember that he would say. One was, he would always say to us, "Our patch isn't big enough. Your patch is not big enough." And by that, your patch. He would say, "We by ourselves will not get as much done for our people, for our communities, unless we join together with other people to create the quilt. Your patch is not big enough you by yourself, us by ourselves, our patch is not big enough. We need, and so it was his love and his understanding of coalition politics and of drawing a circle bigger to include more people who were bound by like-mindedness in terms of economic issues. We were all poor. We were all broke. We were all at odds with a system. So he taught us how to find those commonalities and focus on those to build a bigger quilt, as opposed to just focusing on our little patch. The other thing he used to tell us is you got to know the rules. You got to know the rules in order to break the rules, in order to know how to break the rules. Learn the rules so you can break the rules. And so there were a few of us, me, Donna Brazil, Vinyam Moore, we set about learning the party rules. So we would know how to change the rules in order to make it more advantageous and to make them fairer for folks. And so Reverend was a pioneer in that regard. After the 88 campaign, we changed the party rules to allow more people access to the presidential counter. Before Reverend, the Democratic Party's primary process was that it was winner take all. If you went into a state and you won 40% of the vote, it didn't matter. Whoever won 42% would get all the delegates. But after Reverend in 88, we changed the party rules so that we went to proportional representation. You got 40% of the vote, you got 40% of the delegates.
Question, how did you, I mean, y'all just didn't go in the computer and delete and change the rules. What was
we had, well, first of all, he had so much influence in the 88 campaign because he had the second most delegates after Dukakis. So he came to the table with some leverage, and it was a negotiation. We had to negotiate with the powers that be to change those rules. Now, after we changed them, it's been a fight ever since to keep them in a way, to keep that openness around proportional representation, but to also to keep the doors open to make the party more equitable. I want a seat on the rules committee. I sit on the rules committee. So does Donna Mignon. We've created that space where they know before they change a rule, they got to come past us. And that is the legacy of Reverend Jackson. The last thing I'll say that was so influential, that is part of my own professional philosophy. He said, Leah, when you go through a door, when you get through the door, you have a responsibility to swing somebody else through. It is not enough for you to go through the door and leave the door open. You have to reach out your hand and bring somebody else with you. Pull them, push them, but don't just say the door's open, come in. No, go get them. Swing them through. That is your job. That's your task. That's your responsibility to swing someone else through.
Sound like trying to get into the club.
Right.
Leah, I'm sorry, Sakina, you had something that you were going to say.
Yes, I just wanted, I think you were touching on it a bit with, your patch. But I wanted to, you both to expand upon how he began the Rainbow Coalition.
Well, it's interesting. When Jesse first was getting ready to run, there was actually there was one other person that they were, considering running for president. That was Ron Dellums. And yeah. So, but at the 25th anniversary of the March on Washington, in fact, I was political coordinator for that. Donna Brazil was the main administrative coordinator, as I recall. Jesse gave a speech at Congressman Walter Fauntroy's church the evening before the March anniversary, and he started talking about Rainbow Coalition, and the church, the folks in the church started chanting, "Run, Jesse, run." I mean, it was amazing. And when he came in to speak at the march, you could hear it reverberate again. And so, from my perspective, I think that's the first time I heard it. Now, he got the concept probably of the Rainbow Coalition from our brother Black Panther in Chicago. Fred Hampton, who he first used the term when he was building a rainbow coalition in with poor whites in the rural areas of Illinois. And Jesse being from Chicago and being bright enough to pick up on what was a brilliant idea from one of the most brilliant organizers that I had ever met, which was Fred Hampton. I think he took that and appropriately used it, to help mobilize a broad coalition. And it worked. The Irish, there is no Dave Dinkins without Jesse, and there is no Barack Obama without Jesse. This Rainbow Coalition concept, starting with the base of the Black community, and I might add Black women, Leah, who are the base of the base of the Black vote. When we were organizing the second campaign for the presidency, I remember we were at the Sheraton Hotel, I think, as the votes were coming in, and Jesse took New York City. And that's the first time that a Black person had ever won New York City. Yeah. And so we're in the elevator, here again, the usual suspects, Al Van, Reverend Daughtry, Percy Sutton, Dave Dinkins, and myself. And we're coming down on the elevator, and Jesse, he looks at us and he says, well, I took it. And then he turns to Dave and he says, it's your turn. You take it next. And I think it was like about 2 weeks later, I get a call from Bill Lynch, yeah, David wants to talk to you. So I come in, he says, you heard what Jesse said. Do you think we can do this? And I said, hell yeah. And so Jesse, built the civic infrastructure that we needed and the political consciousness that Black folks needed to be able to take that next step. He was the first African American to win New York City as an elected official. And based upon those votes, we started tracking it. John Plateau mapped that thing out. And we figured how Jesse could, how David Dinkins could build on that, scaffold on top of that and become the first mayor, African-American mayor of New York City. And that's what happened. Without Jesse, there's no Dave Dinkins. And that same civic infrastructure planted the seeds for Barack Obama's election as president also.
Listen, the rainbow is also an outgrowth and a reflection of his campaign, right? Because he patched together this rainbow coalition of poor whites, Blacks, folks from Latinos, Asians. And remember, Jesse won 13 states. And that was not simply because of Black people. That was because of the rainbow coalition that he put together. And so he continued that theme in his post-campaign career.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Listen, y'all, stay with us because we're going to take a little recap. Each show, we look back at Festival 54. So if you were not there, you're going to kick yourself. And if you were there, then you can enjoy these few moments of reflection. So we're going to take a real short break and be right back with Roger Green and Bishop Leah Daughtry. I want to take off from what Sakina raised, the Rainbow Coalition, because one of the things, and Roger, you know, my area of interest has been international affairs, and
Mm.
so I'm wondering what was responsible for his active participation in international activities, and not only just being able to bring home people that were captured, but with other social justice freedom struggles going on around the world. What motivated that coming out of Chicago, Leah?
It was really, he's probably a Pan-Africanist before his time, or we didn't call him a Pan-Africanist, but that's what he was. And it's really an extension of, I think his deeply held religious beliefs about the commonality of mankind and womankind that knows no borders. So injustice, understand injustice doesn't exist only in the United States. But so wherever there is a need or cry for justice, then we ought to be concerned and we ought to use our influence to right those wrongs. And so whether it was, you talked about Robert Goodman and getting Robert Goodman out, all the places that he traveled to see even to see the Pope, to talk about justice issues. It was really out of his understanding that none of us is free unless all of us are free. And so taking that concern beyond the borders of our 50 states and to overseas places to raise awareness and to assure people that the commonality of humankind is really what binds us together rather than the division of these borders that we have.
But what was it about him that made folk responsive to him?
Mm.
I think the way that we responded,
no, in terms of the international scene.
Yeah, but I think the same sort of thing that Roger was talking about how he could sheer force of personality, and he knew their history. He wasn't going in blind. He knew the history. He knew the issues. And Jesse he had the gift of magnetism, and he.
Oh no.
She froze.
She froze. Lord.
Jesse.
All right, yeah, go ahead, Roger. Pick up when she comes back.
Yeah, Jesse was one part Pan-Africanist and one part internationalist, his Pan-Africanist roots was, obviously based in his sense of self-worth and identity as a Black man and his connection to the African diaspora. And beyond that, he had this empathy and compassion for providing justice for people who were outside of his own community, And I want to here's another story, and Adeyemi, you know this well, because you were on staff at that time. We had just organized the June 14th March Against Apartheid, as you recall, at Central Park. More than 100,000 people there. I was political coordinator for that as well. But Adeyemi had arranged for me to go to the World Conference Against Apartheid in Paris, France. Adeyemi had these incredible skills with the international community, particularly going back to when he did that with Reverend Daughtry with the Black United Front. And so I flew over there with Jesse and Reverend Daughtry and Randall Robinson and Gail McDougall and Ron Dellums also. All right. So we arrived, and Harry Belafonte. So we arrived in Paris, France. And, as usual, all of us are doing a presentation on why we needed to do divestiture legislation to break the apartheid regime. All right. Now, what happens is, I think Adeyemi, you called me from Brooklyn to tell me that there was a fire at the Brooklyn Arms Hotel where some children had gotten burnt up. All right. And there was a major catastrophe. And we had been railing about this for years, what was happening over there. In fact, first time I used the term social welfare colonialism was about what was happening there, right? Anyhow, on the way back on the plane, talking to Reverend Daughtry and Jesse, I told them what I had heard had happened at the Brooklyn Arms Hotel, and said that we were probably going to do a press conference. And Jesse said, "All right, I'm gonna be there." And it's amazing that the fact that here's, we coming back overseas, everybody's tired now, jet lag, but he said, nevertheless, we went over to Brooklyn Arms Hotel and he held this press conference. And one of the things that, again, I will never forget is I didn't have a chance to provide a briefing and orientation for him in terms of the history of Brooklyn Arms and how that connected with the growing numbers of Black mothers who were homeless in New York City. So Reverend Daughtry and I are following him down the steps, and the press is all around us, and all I could do was shout out information like, Jesse, the total number of women and the Black women in the homeless hotels is blah, blah, blah. And Jesse, the infant mortality rate is, all this I'm shouting to him and hoping that he hears it. I couldn't, fathom that he could, but I was hoping. We get to the bottom, sit in front of the press. That man went chapter and verse articulating the data, the numbers of people who were homeless, the Black women who were homeless, the poverty rates, all the stuff I shouted out. And Reverend Daughtry and I we looked at each other, we just shook our heads. But that intelligence that he had was grounded in wisdom and a love for his people, And I think that's why I'm saying that this concept of the African diaspora, not, whether it was in South Africa, Soweto, or central Brooklyn, he had the capacity to connect the dots, to see sometimes the common misery index that we had, but also the common power that we had to transcend this type of injustices that we were fighting against. And that my sense was authentic. It wasn't like some of these politicians I see today that it's all performance art. It came from the heart, and that's how I'll always remember him, But to me, that was the thing, he was both one part Pan-Africanist and also one part internationalist, particularly as it related to struggling against social and economic injustice.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Thank you for that. I do have a question because you bring up Pan-Africanist and then you say internationalist. And I grew up, I would say Pan-African in the sense of, RBG, red, black, and green flag instead of the United States flag. I'm not, I grew up not saying I pledge allegiance. I grew up singing the Black national anthem. And I'm just listening to you all talk. And, my father did run for political office at one point in Brooklyn. And I just want you to speak to the ideology of the transition of the mind of an activist that goes out to boycott, goes out to fight against injustices. How does that mind shift to wanting to be a part of the system? Does that make sense in my question?
Yeah.
How do you shift from, fighting for Black power to shifting into joining the political system to change it?
I think, can you hear me? I apologize. I'm in Orlando in a hotel, and the hotel's Wi-Fi crashed. So now I'm on my phone. I would say that it's still fighting for Black power. It's just a different way of fighting. It's a different mechanism. There's no one way to fight for Black power. There's no one way, that is the absolute. I think it takes all the legs on the stool, so to speak, in order to create the change that our people need. And in this American experiment, electoral politics is part of that. The people who are making laws that affect us, that affect where our grocery stores are, that affects the kind of air we have, that affects public safety, all of this affect our schools, even our independent schools. These people are in office. And so we can choose to say, I'm not going to engage myself and allow them to make decisions for us. Or, for me, I saw it as a way to build Black political power and to get the kind of changes I want to see happen in the school, so that I'm blissfully child-free. But I got nephews, a niece, and a bunch of others. And I want them to be able to walk to school and be safe. I want the police to treat them right. I want them to be able to afford homes if that's what they choose. All of that's a political process. So yes, we can march and rally, and I have done that, and I do that. But we can also choose to push the levers of political power that are making the decisions, or some of us go into the business model where people are making decisions about our banking, who's funding, where the capital's coming from, how our businesses are being supported. All of these are levers, and what we need, I think, to get the kind of liberation and the kind of community that our people deserve is to have people in all these spaces doing their level best, fighting for our people in the rooms that they are in without competition. It takes all of us. My dad called it an inside-outside strategy. You need people inside, you need people outside. And as long as we're rowing in the same direction with the same goal, you do your work inside. I need you to do your work outside. And both sides together bring the kind of liberation that our people need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Question for you guys: do you know if Reverend Jackson had some unfinished business? Was there something that he was really hot on trying to accomplish that he just wasn't able to?
I would say that in my last conversations with him, what he was thinking about, besides all the crazy we have going on in the nation now in our political process, was around Silicon Valley technology and how our people are being empowered or disenfranchised by the disproportionate distribution of resources, including information, and how we get, especially now in these days of AI, we're all talking about whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether we should. The fact is here, and if we at least need some literacy about it to understand what it is, because it's our jobs that are going to be affected first. So he was really into, in my last conversation with him, how we ensure that those resources, including information resources, are distributed equitably to our people, and that we're not left out of the technological advances that we're having, that we're seeing all around the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Leah, let me just push you one step further, though. In your last conversations with him, was there any discussion about the midterm elections and the possibilities there?
No, we didn't talk about that. He was really into his Silicon. He was trying to get me to come to his Wall Street conference and his Silicon Valley, and my schedule was just all jammed up. Reverend asked you at the last minute, and I was like, man. So I tried to move heaven and earth to get there, but that he was focused on Wall Street and the money that is on Wall Street, that we are not part of that discussion or equation. And Silicon Valley, we didn't talk about the midterms at all.
Yeah. Now, Sakina, I want to just follow up on the piece that you raised and ask, talk about his focus on economics and the establishment of the Rainbow Coalition and Operation Push. Well, in fact, let me back up, because, we're political animals here, so we understand. was there some friction with him leaving Reverend King's organization, or was it just a growth process?
As I understand it, Roger, you may know the answer, but as I understand it, it was a growth process. I mean, after Dr. King died, everybody was trying to figure out their way. John Lewis and, you Stokely, and he was still Stokely then. Everybody's trying to figure out who and the what and the where. And so, people went their ways. And he stayed along because remember he was head of Operation Breadbasket, which was the economic arm of SCLC, which was Dr. King's organization. So from that, after Operation Breadbasket came Push.
That's right. Yeah.
And then the Rainbow came, and then they got joined together. Rainbow Push.
That's right. Yeah, I think it was just a natural progression. That had to happen, again, because in many ways, Jesse was the more contemporary of the leadership that surrounded Dr. King, and as I said earlier, had more of an inclination to align himself with folks who were part of both the Black Power movement, the Black consciousness movement, like that, and so I think it was just a natural progression, and Operation Push really incorporated a lot of an ethos of economic self-determination and economic self-reliance, which was not that much emphasized by the traditional civil rights leaders, though they did that, but when you're talking about their public articulation of issues, that wasn't something that they did a lot. But Jesse did. And I think that was part of an important growth for him, his organization, and for our larger community. Yeah. And I'm glad to hear, what Leah said about this whole piece about AI. I wish I could have spoken to Jesse about the reality of these what I call tech monarchists in Silicon Valley. The fact that the founders of PayPal are all white South African immigrants. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, David Sachs, who's Trump's AI and crypto czar, and Roelof Botha, who is the grandson of Pete Botha. These are all the folks who founded PayPal and have since spun off an organization, an enterprise called Palantir, which currently is the surveillance and intelligence arm for ICE. And, so the fact that, when like Al Van and I introduced the divestiture bill, which was directed at Kodak and IBM, prohibiting state government from doing business with them because they had created the passbook system for South Africa, and now I have to walk around with my passbook, my real ID, or my passport, because of ICE and because of Palantir being orchestrated by white South Africans who I think, and quite honestly, are proto-fascists. I would love to have talked to Jesse about what kind of strategies we need to develop in terms of addressing that particular existential threat. What does this mean? And because Jesse had deep understanding of the relationship of all of these kind of things and how it relates historically. And so that's something that, I wish I could have talked to him about, but it sounds, to Leah, what she just said, that he was already giving some serious thought to that as well.
Hey, y'all, our time is going, I should say, on this. Sakina, you want to get one in before we
Yeah. What I don't know if you have heard, but I know since his passing, and I look at the algorithms and seeing what people are saying online, and there are those that honor him, and then there are those that criticize him. And I don't know if you have heard any of the criticism that he has received, but have you heard that people are calling him a sellout and, that he allegedly framed MLK and all of those, controversial things, and I know from you guys, being close to him and having positive experiences of him, what do you say to those, critics?
You
You know,
know, I have blessedly, my algorithm has blessedly spared me from the foolishness
Okay.
because I don't need anybody making my blood pressure go up. Losing Reverend was hard enough
Mm.
to have to relitigate craziness like him framing MLK, which is the dumbest. I feel about these folks the way I feel about the people who during COVID became doctors. It's like,
yeah,
come on. I mean,
yeah,
really. And if your research and your knowledge of Reverend Jackson stops at the Lorraine Hotel in 1968, then I can't have any conversation with you.
Mm.
Because
yeah,
the arc of what he stood for, the way that he changed this nation and his nation's politics, the way, look at the tributes that are coming from around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are stopped at the Lorraine Motel, then I would suggest that you need to expand your horizons. You need to read a little further. You need to do some history, and you need to talk to one of the millions of people whose lives Reverend Jackson touched and affected.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think part of what happens is, and that's the contrast. You have these men and women who have spoken truth to power and have lived in truth. And then, unfortunately, because of social media and the how it's made us so atomized, disconnected from each other, folks become disconnected from reality.
Mm.
And then when you have intentional orchestration of fascists and proto-fascists and extreme racist ethno-nationalists, essentially telling a lie, as Goebbels said, to tell a lie. If it's a big enough lie, if you repeat it often enough, the
People
people will
believe it.
believe it.
Yeah.
Whether it's a group of African Americans in Atlanta and Detroit stole the election from their preferred candidate, the Mussolini of Mar-a-Lago over there.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you get, these conspiracy theories. And it is why, it's important that when a leader like ours is going to their ancestors, that those of us who know him, speak the truth about how we knew him, how he lived, and how he served us. And that's what we've got to do. And hopefully, as Leah said, some folks will pick up some books and do some studying, and not just listen to the nonsense on the internet, to understand who we are as a people and those leaders who really made major contributions to for our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
Definitely.
listen.
Well, that's why
Um,
I asked the question, because I know that, there is controversy and we are speaking with people who know him directly. And so I wanted to get that out, and also have you speak to him coining the term African American, because I know that's one of the things that he is known for.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
absolutely,
Oh yes.
absolutely,
Oh yes.
absolutely.
And yeah. And I think for the folks who traffic in these stories or controversies around him, I think we have to be bigger and ask ourselves who's benefiting from that.
yeah.
Who's
Right.
benefiting from us tearing down our leaders? Who's benefiting?
The
What's
drama.
what's the point of that? What are you really trying to get done? And when you stop to ask, why would people be generating these conversations? Then you really get to the heart of what power is and what folks are
Teach,
trying to do in our communities and with our
teach.
people by trafficking in these sorts of falsehoods, these sorts of conspiracies, because it's all intended to make you stay home, to make you disengage, to make you not trust our brothers and sisters, and to create this sort of animosity between us and mistrust. And
Yes,
who benefits from that?
that's right.
The powers
Teach.
that be and the power structure that is, who are afraid, deathly afraid, that we might unite and rise up and change this system.
That's right. Teach.
Listen, last week we had Professor James Small, and he talked about the most feared person on the planet right now are Black youth. And Beware asked me to ask you guys, how do we educate the younger generation about his contribution? And particularly, we're in African American History Month. So I want both of you all to speak to that quickly, but also what has come up for me in hearing you all talk about Jesse is Mr. B, Belafonte.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like y'all are talking about the same people. Do you see a comparison? You got to do this short now, but do you all see a comparison between the two of them?
Go ahead,
Yes.
Roger.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorely missed, well, they were all part of Dr. King's kitchen cabinet, Cleve Robinson, Mr. B, Jesse, Charles. I mean, these were the folks that surrounded him. Cleve Robinson. So, I mean, we need, to me, that we've had a conversation about this a few weeks ago with Esmeralda Simmons and some other folks. We are committed now to trying, because I'm seeing more sunsets than sunrises in the next few years. And we've got to be committed to building the institutions to transfer the knowledge over to these young folks because they are so feared. And because of the reality that within 25 years, 1 out of every 4 person born on the planet will have been born on the African continent.
Yep.
All right. And when you combine that with the people of African heritage that live in South and Central America, North America, and the Caribbean, that's why you got folks like Elon Musk and everybody talking about white genocide, and replacement theories, because they fear that, and because they fear it, we can't take that for granted. We have to build institutions so that our youngins have the appropriate core proficiencies of the values, knowledge, and skills to survive as they become a serious majority. All right. That's going to be critical. And so I think, that's what we need to do, at least, that's how I feel for the rest of my time on this planet, God willing, that, I'll be able to work on building the type of educational institutions that will prepare them, for this, this is a paradigm shift that's about to happen. That why folks fear them, we just need to make sure that they don't fear each other and that they love each other. And that's why it's important to lift up folks like Reverend Jesse Jackson, like Reverend Herbert Daughtry, like Harry Belafonte, like Al Van, like G2 Usi, all these brothers and the sisters, Rosa Parks and Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, all these folks who have contributed, to making our lives better. Yeah.
Hey, Leah, could you continue that? But is there a particular challenge for reaching female African American youth, these young sisters?
Yeah, I think it's generational, and I try to remember that we are raising a generation of people right now who weren't alive during 9/11. right?
Think about that. Wow. Think
They've
about that.
read about 9/11 in history books, so we should not assume
Wow.
a set of knowledge for them. My
That's
nephews are 18, and
Wow.
they don't remember it before smartphones. We all remember when we first got a phone, right? It's like, oh, and the phone was big as a shoebox, right? They're
Yeah.
like, what? But 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 that's our history. It's not theirs.
that's
And so
right.
we have a responsibility to have the conversation. It's not deep. It doesn't have to be, a whole lot of bells and whistles. Grab somebody. I grab my brothers. Let's talk about your grandfather. Let's talk about
Mm.
your great grandfather. Let's talk about your fifth great grandmother who was born in 1789 as a slave. Let's do this history. And they're like, what? Because as far as they're concerned, I'm 100 years old and I was there when the wheel was invented. But so we have to be willing to invest the
Yes.
time, the energy in our young people, and we have to be willing to listen to what they're saying
Yes.
and
Yes.
hear
Yes.
their concerns,
So
That's
I have,
hear
right.
what
I have
they are
one more
saying and what they are experiencing. And some things that my nephews I go, well, that's dumb. Because let me tell you what you should do. No, they have feelings about it. Let's have the dialogue and the interchange and exchange the information. I learned from them. I can't work Instagram to save my life. My nephew knows how. It's too many things. I get confused. But my nephew knows how to do it. So Daniel, fix my phone, please. So,
Right.
but
Right.
we've got to commit to that intergenerational dialogue and intergenerational learning, which means sharing the stories
That's right.
of
That's
our
right.
own families, of our own communities, and of the ancestors who paved the way for us.
That's
Because
right.
if
Mhm.
we
so
don't tell it, who's going to tell it? We
That's
I
right.
depend
have
on the
a
school system to
question.
tell it?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you
have
so
a
much.
question.
Um,
Have you all heard of the new term foundational Black American?
Yes.
Yes.
FBA? And
Hmm.
this movement of transitioning from us being called African American to now foundational Black American, and the
Mm.
ideology that a lot of our ancestors were American Indian and not necessarily African all the way. Um, how do you speak to that?
Well, I mean, again, the question is who's orchestrating this? Because a lot of this came out of I started hearing this as folks started having some momentum around the whole issue of reparations. And who's
Right.
going to get what. And I think it's just another divide and conquer type of
Mhm.
a scheme that folks are pushing on us. I introduced the first reparations bill in New York, and when they started holding hearings on the one that was eventually enacted into law, and I heard some of this, I was dumbfounded. But as Leah said, it's important for us to listen and like Ralph Ellison said, we have to have these special antennas that can pick up the lower frequencies of racism, where it's coming from. And I think that, this is about education again. My family is on my father's side is from Wilmington, North Carolina. And the fact of the matter is that, um, close to 98% of the folks who came into Wilmington and Charleston, South Carolina came from where? Barbados. All right. From Barbados, from where? West Africa, we all from there, and so for folks to get into all this minutia about who is and who ain't, it undermines the fact that we as Malcolm said, we are all interconnected. And the clearest example of that is when, and Leah knows this, and Adeyemi, when we were struggling after Randolph Evans was killed, who was killed next? Um, uh, 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 Amadou Diallo. Where was he from? Who else was killed? The brother from Haiti that was brutalized. All these different folks were part of an African diaspora, and they were killed not because of anything other than they were of African heritage, and we need to keep that in mind, as we move forward. So yeah, I've heard of it, and I think this is just another example of why we need educational systems or institutions that we build to transfer the appropriate knowledge to our youngins.
Yeah, I go back to Queen Mother Moore. She said, if a cat has kittens in an oven, does that make them biscuits?
There's a great book out, a book just came out about it.
I haven't seen it yet. I hope to see it.
I just picked it up the other day. Yeah.
And I go back to my question: who benefits?
Yeah, that's
from
right,
us making this division among ourselves. Today is Foundational Black Americans. Then a couple of years ago, it was American Descendants of Slaves, ADOS, and it was this same thing. Who was Black that was descended from slaves versus who Black that came from someplace. Who benefits from that?
Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Who benefits from us dividing ourselves from each other? It doesn't make, and a lot of it I understand is about reparations and who will get none of us have any reparations right now, so we fighting over fictional money. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it.
Well, I don't know.
But listen, I'm sorry. Hold on, y'all, because I don't want to get too far. Sakina, hold on a minute. I don't want to get too far away from Jesse, because this is a whole other show that we can do. And our time is pretty much up. We're gonna address that topic by itself, because I think it's an important one.
But I want to thank you shifted me, because I am getting to Jesse, because Jesse is the one that coined the term African American, right?
The challenges we
with Jesse,
he coined the term African American.
Yes, because he was trying to create a connection to the land, which is what others were doing. Italian American and German American and Chinese American, every other kind of American was connected to land, except Black folk. And so his attempt was to say, we are joined together because we're connected to Africa.
Right, okay, so I think what the Foundational Black American term is doing is connecting the African to this land deeper, because a lot of people can say, you know what, I got Indian in my family, and being African American, there is no connection to the Cherokee, the Choctaw, and all of the Native American tribes here. And so I think with that movement, it's not necessarily separating, but more so adding on to.
I think that they should celebrate their Native American heritage if that's what they have, and Native Americans,
American Indian,
whichever. So, look, I have friends on the land, so some of them call themselves American Indians, some of them call themselves Native Americans. Whatever term they choose to use for themselves, I go with. And I have friends that do both things, and I just have to learn which thing they prefer and call them that, right? Because I honor their name, honor the way that they name themselves, and that's fine. That's fine. So I just don't understand, and I agree with Adeyemi. We're going a little further afield, but in the end, we are. Those of us who claim Black heritage are here because of our connection to Africa. We may have other things, but the way we got here, the way we got to this land was from Africa. Some of us got off the boat a stop earlier, or were taken off the boat a stop earlier, but we came from the continent of Africa, and we may have connected with Native Americans or American Indians when we got here, but we came from the continent. Right. And that's what Reverend was trying to connect us to, through a connection to the land of our origin, like other communities connect to the land of their origin. And that's not to discount our Native American and American Indian brothers and sisters and their connection to this land. But as my dad likes to say, it's a poor frog that doesn't praise his own pond. And so I'm gonna connect to the African. And look, my great grandmother was Cherokee. Okay.
Yeah. That's right.
Hey, listen, To both of you. Thank you so very much. Before we leave, Roger, you're doing something on Sunday with Esmeralda. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we're going to thank you. A program at Bedside Restoration in which we're going to have a dialogical discourse around the Obama administration and how it should respond to the needs and interests of the African diasporic community. Yeah.
All right, good. So we look forward to hearing that discussion. Leah, I sincerely thank you so very much for finding some time in your schedule. I'm a little pissed with myself because I should have bought a lottery ticket. Because if I was able to hook you up, I know, and Roger too. Hey man, good thing I don't play crap.
Now you know I do anything for you, Adeyemi. You know that.
Well, you know, when the Daughtry's call, all I can say is, "What you need me to do?"
Listen, Lumumba is my talking buddy. So he'll call and say, "Hey sis," I was like, "What you need? What you need?"
Yeah. I know. But thank you all so much, man. And
thank you
for this education. For this education. We appreciate it. And we will be together again. Leah, please stay the
And Sakina, good to see you. Please say hello to your mom. Your mom used to braid my hair back when I was experimenting with having hair. Please tell her I said hello.
And your father used to braid my brain, you know.
Leah and Roger, we need your support in terms of spreading the word about this podcast. So whatever you can do to let folk know that we're here every Thursday at 8 o'clock, and you know we're carrying on a diverse topics and so on, and we're building our voice. We're building our voice. You know, we're not CNN, but we are the voice of festival, and it carries as much importance. We got Leah Daughtry and Roger Green here. So, so until next time, we want to thank you all. And Sakina, let folk know again how they can support us as we roll out.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. Like, comment, subscribe, share, and please let us know your thoughts. Thank you.
All right. So until next time, you all, please be loving, be blessed, and be safe.
Okay.
Peace.